to thank you for watching our little devotional video this evening. I do regret that we're not able to be in person tonight. Seems like we've had a lot of storms coming through lately, and certainly we recognize the danger of possibly being out on the road during something like that. I appreciate the elders having the best interest of this congregation in mind and their decision in that. Now, if you want to keep up with our regular studies from the Life Lessons series, you can pick up in Judges chapter 16 and continue to look at some of those things to do with Samson and Delilah. We're going to pick back up there next time with those studies, and we will finish up our discussion about Samson. And we'll close out the book of Judges, hopefully, or at least we'll pick back up and look at some of those things and continue on. It'll be a good study for you if you're looking for something to look into tonight. Just pick up in Judges chapter 16 and go through the rest of the book or whatever you feel like reading to get yourself prepared for next time. Now, as far as the thought that I wanted to share with you goes for this evening, I wanted to think about negativity and positivity. I want to ask you a question. Do you think this world needs more negativity, or do you think this world needs more positivity? I want to read you. I found this thing. It was on a plaque in Arnold Palmer's office on his wall. Now, I know that most of you, may not everyone play golf, but most of you probably know who Arnold Palmer is, and you know something about Arnold Palmer. He was a very successful golfer. He was successful in life, in business, in golf. It seems like he was successful in most things that he did. It seems like that a lot of that was related to the fact that he kind of kept himself under control, kept a positive attitude, and was just an upstanding figure. Now, so this is what the plaque said. If you think you are beaten, you are. If you think you dare not, you don't. If you'd like to win but think you can't, it's almost certain you won't. Life's battles don't always go to the stronger or faster man, but sooner or later the man who wins is the man who thinks he can. Now that's certainly a positive quote and something good to think about. Now, as you're thinking about this, you may be thinking, well, here the preacher is and he's talking to us about things to do with positivity and always keeping a positive attitude. Is he trying to say that we can't talk about error or oppose error? And certainly, I'm not trying to say that at all. I do believe we should oppose error. But the thing that concerns me is that I'm worried that sometimes we maybe spend more time correcting error or looking for error than we do in trying to spread good and teach people what's right and how they ought to live, and about, especially and most of all, the love of God and the love of Christ. And so I feel like that would be a good focus for us. Now, we look at the life of Jesus and we see that he certainly was a man that opposed error. I'm thinking about him overturning tables and calling out hypocritical Jewish leaders, and he certainly did things like that. But what's he remembered for? Well, in Acts chapter 10, Peter says that he was known as a man who went about doing good. In Acts chapter 10 and verse 38. So how do you remember Jesus? What comes to mind to you when you think about him? Do you think about negativity, or do you think about the positive things that he did? I don't know about you, but I think about the positive things that he did. He was a light to this world. He was a man that came to seek and save the lost. He was a man who was seen with people who other people would not be seen with. He was a man that was willing to reach out his hand and touch a leper when he didn't have to do that, because he wanted to touch people's hearts and he wanted to be a light in this world, and I think he's left us a good example. So we've talked about the positivity for just a minute. I want to share with you some things about some negative things, or maybe something from the negative side of things. It's from a couple of surveys that I found. It says a survey asked mothers to keep track of how many times they made negative compared with positive comments to their children. They admitted that they criticized 10 times for every time they said something favorable. A 3-year survey in one city's schools found that the teachers were 75% negative. The study indicated that it takes 4 positive statements from a teacher to offset the effects of 1 negative statement to a child. Another study shows as much as 77% of everything we think is negative and counterproductive and works against us. People who grow up in an average household here know or are told what they can't do more than 148,000 times by the time they reach the age of 18. The result, unintentional negative programming. Now, I don't know about you, but I see how this works for children, but I feel like it works the same way for me. And I try to stay away from negative people. If I have someone in my life that I know that when I'm around them, they're going to have negative things to say, I try to avoid that person, because I want to be surrounded with people that have can-do attitudes and are positive, who believe that they can succeed at their goals, and they believe that I can succeed at mine, and that they're sharing that kind of attitude with other people. And friends, I believe that's the kind of people that we ought to be in the church, because we have got a very powerful force on our side, and we've got a very good reason to have a positive attitude. Thinking about that, I want to just share a few verses from the Apostle Paul that I believe are very positive verses. The first one is Philippians chapter 4 and verse 13. I'm sure most of you probably know this verse by heart. Paul says, "I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me." You see, Paul had an attitude that no matter what mountain he faced or what obstacle was in his way, if he had Jesus on his side, he could overcome that thing. And that was the way that he approached life. You just read throughout the book of Acts, you read the epistles of Paul, you see all the adversity that he faced. He was not a man that was willing to go down easy, and he was not going to let anything stand in his way. I had a joke at one time, or well, I guess it wasn't really a joke, but I used to say that I was going to make a sermon that was called the Rambo of the Bible, because on one occasion, Paul was beaten and drug out of a city, picked himself up, went back in, and continued about his work. And that's the kind of man that he was. In 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 and verse 18, Paul says, "In everything give thanks." Now you think about that. A man that is imprisoned for living a Christian life, a man that had once been a persecutor, now finding himself being in chains, and he's what's coming upon him daily, he says it was his deep concern for all the churches. He wasn't feeling sorry for himself and say, "Oh, woe is me, I'm in bad shape, and somebody break me out and come and do all these things." He was worried about the churches, and he was worried about those people that he had converted, and he wanted to make sure that they found their way to heaven, they found the right path. But not only that, he wanted to make sure that he was a good influence and that those people stayed on that path. Friends, we're supposed to be a light shining in a dark world, and I don't think negativity is a way to be a bright, shining light in a dark world. I think we need to have a positive attitude. We need to spread that to other people. And I know that we are promised a home in heaven when we leave this world if we are in Christ. But I also believe that we can have a better life in this world if we take a good attitude, go about doing good like Jesus did, seek to save the lost, take the attitude that Paul had, that I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And I believe you'll have a better life not only in the next life, but in this life as well. I want to thank you once again for watching our message, and I pray that you have a blessed evening.